Spanish AML obligations are amongst the most stringent in Europe and therefore pose a significant challenge to international and local operators expanding into the Spanish market. Here to tell us more about specific related compliance challenges faced by Spain licensed operators are Pedro López Martín-Andino, who is managing partner at Martín-Andino Abogados, and Javier, who is senior associate AI, digital economy, technology and privacy at the ECIJA. Please come to the stage, gentlemen, have a seat. This was such a complex topic that nobody was willing to... No, that's just good. So we have 4 questions prepared for you. They will be shown on the stage. Good. There's no moderator. You're the expert, so we will guide you through the questions as we start. And I leave it to you, Pedro, to read the first question and discuss it with Javier. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Willem, first of all, for organizing this event as usual every year, and also thank you everyone else for attending this conference. This first question, I think, is a very, very relevant and very important question that has caused lots of concern to the online gaming operators. In a session that was held back on February 2025 with the DGOJ and the SEBLAC, the Spanish AML authority, the SEBLAC confirmed that they would consider as a mandatory obligation to implement video identification mechanisms within as part of the identification process of the player. As you know, once the funds exceed, the deposits exceed 150 euros, or if there is a withdrawal, the player has to go through the documental verification process. And at this point, the SEBLAC considers that it's not sufficient with providing a copy of the ID document, but also with adding a video identification layer as part of the KYC process. From the strict legal point of view, there could be arguments to challenge this standpoint from the SEBLAC, but the key thing here is that this is the criterion that is going to be applied by the SEBLAC. And also from the practical point of view, I think that everybody agrees that it could be beneficial to add the video identification mechanism to reduce the level of impersonation and fraud identifications that there exist right now in Spain. Please also let me inform you that the SEBLAC has released guidelines, specific guidelines on how the video identification mechanism has to work, how it has to be implemented, previously tested, it has to be certified, and obviously there will have to be several tests before implementing it. So obviously this is something very important and that needs to be considered by operators.
Yeah, I just would like to add to Pedro that, of course, that process as well needs to comply with GDPR, and GDPR is telling you some extra layers of protection. One of them, for instance, is that you need to inform previously the player how you're going to process his data, and as well what kind of data you can collect, right? So when we are talking about video identification process, this is not biometric data. The operator really needs to know that, because biometric data has...
We can't hear you, so just use it.
We can? Right now, yeah? You can now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, I was just saying that the operator needs to know that biometric data is not allowed right now to be used if you want to identify the player, right? Maybe in the future, it's going to be an amendment of the law, and it's going to be possible to use biometric data, but right now there is no possible legal basis. So this is something important that the operator needs to take into consideration. And of course, as well, there is the security infrastructure that you are implementing when you're using that, because you don't want to have a data breach, right? So GDPR as well needs to be there, not only anti-money laundering, let's say.
Okay, I think there is a new question.
Yeah, we can go to the next.
Okay, the next question goes about AI and how operators could use these new tools for AML purposes and also to identify potential fraud. Obviously, fraud and money laundering are very closely related, and these new tools definitely can be of help. One evident use of AI, which is currently being implemented or already implemented by most applications and tools that exist in the market about AML is transaction monitoring, because obviously AML tools are capable of analyzing big amounts of data, relating them, and being able to detect patterns that maybe could be otherwise they could become unaware by traditional means. There is also another potential use of AI, which is more innovative, which has to do with the spatial analysis. As you know, once there is a trigger of a suspicious AML transaction, there has to be a special analysis. So basically, the analyst, probably senior analysts, or even the MLRO, have to perform a special analysis and to make a report on the findings and to make a conclusion to determine if the suspicious transaction needs to be reported to the AML authority or otherwise doesn't need to be reported. And obviously AI will be definitely capable of helping also in this phase. Obviously, this special report stage needs definitely human verification, and also from the regulatory point of view, the AI regulation is something that needs to be taken into consideration, right, Javier?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously AI has been proven very useful as per to detect fraud, right, and to identify fraud. But at the same time, there is two laws that is interplaying as well. One is AI Act, as you said, and we saw in the session before some of the requirements. But basically, the operator really need to list all AI systems, need to categorize the risk. Some of them might be high risk, but maybe if you do a proper design of the system, that could be even low risk. It really depends the final setup that you are implementing there. And then, of course, there is as well GDPR at the state, right? Because the way you train that AI system might also be a conflict, and you are as well maybe getting some GDPR risks. First of all, you need a legal basis as per to train your AI system. Usually, you're going to rely upon legitimate interest, but even the legitimate interest of the operator needs to be balanced with the interest of the players, right? So it's very important to have a proper legal strategy and being compliant with the different areas of law.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Next question has to do with international operators and the way they adapt and localize their policies in AML policies in Spain. Okay, and this is a very important point to bear in mind in certain audits that we have conducted to international operators or international groups that have a Spanish operator. There is obviously a tendency to implement procedures at a group level, at a group international level. And also the governance structures are organized at an international level. And unfortunately, this may not be sufficient in accordance with Spanish AML laws and regulations. Spanish AML laws are stricter than the average in the European Union, and there are several components that need to be included in the local policies or in the governance structures. So, for example, and to give you a practical example, an operator that has an AML, fraud, risk, and compliance committee, which also deals with AML in 6 or 7 countries, cannot be acceptable from the CEPLAC point of view as the Spanish OCI, órgano de internal body of control, which is required in accordance with Spanish laws. And therefore, both the governance bodies need to have a local component and need to be focused on local AML, Spanish AML issues. And also the manuals and the procedures need to be localized and adapted. Some specific sections need to be adapted to Spanish standards to be considered as acceptable. This is not something theoretical, and in fact, we are aware of inspections made by the CEPLAC where these points have been raised. So it's very important to take this into consideration.
Yeah, that's very precise. So, of course, one policy fits all is no longer valid, right? So, we really need to tailor-make the policies, the protocols, and everything to the actual risks that are at national level. Of course, it makes sense to have some policies at group level, but then you want to land and you want to make it tailor-made, basically because at the end, the supervisor is the one that can put you a fine, right? So you want to go in line with the Spanish supervisor. This means as well using their own methodology, their own interpretation. That's going to be easier for the operator to defend for any claim and for any issue, legal issue that might have. As well, I think it's very important to remark here about the training, right? So some operators, they like to do the same training independently of where the employees are located, which doesn't really make sense because, as I was saying before, the risks in Spain are different maybe from Malta. So then you really need to train your employee according to the risks at national level. So yeah.
Okay, good. And the final question, the final point has to do with the EU AML package, which, as you know, will progressively come into force, and particularly on July 2027, which is the key date. And this EU AML package means more harmonization. There will be a EU regulation which will harmonize certain areas for all the countries. As you know, it's not a directive, so it doesn't need local transposition. And then we'll have the sixth directive as well. There is an important area that has to do, beside the harmonization, has to do with governance, as there will be more regulatory burden in this matter. Besides the traditional MLRO, there will have to be an AML designated officer, a new position, and also there will have to be more involvement from the directorship, whether if it's an individual directors or two directors, or whether if it's a board of directors. The directorship level will have to have more involvement on AML matters, and also there will be additional checks that will have to be performed regarding the honorability of the directors, of the higher managers, and also their experience. So these areas will have to be specifically audited and verified.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to add that, of course, this is going to be easier for operators because it's an harmonized EU framework, which means that it's going to be more solid market. But of course, this is like with data protection, then it's going to be some particular issues yet that we need to give an answer at national level. So even though it's going to be some harmonized framework here, this doesn't mean that you don't have to put efforts to comply with at national level. And of course, I think to finish that, it's very important as well to have proper evidence, right, of your way that you are complying. This goes in line with accountability principle and having all the documents ready to use at national level. This is particularly important instance when you are operating with banks. We know that operators sometimes, they have problems, right, to find a bank that they want actually to collaborate with. So it's important to have all this documentation ready to use, the external audit report ready to use, so you're not going to have any problem there, right? And you're going to be able to keep operating in Spain.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So,
okay, I think we cover the 4 questions.
Thank you. Please stay here. This was all super informative. I think we have 2 questions from the audience we would like to look at. I think we have 2 questions coming in. So let's look at the first one that came in, Slido. I appreciate you're Spanish lawyers, but maybe you can say something general about that. How do Spain AML reporting requirements differ from those in other countries?
If the question is related to suspicious transactions to the AML authority, there isn't really much difference. There is a specific form called F19 that has to be filled in and submitted electronically to the SEBLAC each time you detect a suspicious transaction. And by the way, the SEBLAC, as a new matter, from time to time evaluates, gives feedback to the operators and provides them a rating on how the suspicious transactions that they report, what's the quality from the being submitted in a timely manner and the content, etc. But obviously the there is not really much difference, and basically the suspicious activity report reported to the SEBLAC needs to be well documented and include in a very recent manner what are the reasons for the suspicious transaction.
Javier?
Yeah, just maybe would add that maybe the form, there is not really difference between different countries, but maybe what triggers the reporting, this might differ, right? So the risks in Spain might be considered at different level, maybe in Malta. So that might trigger to do a report, that might be considered a suspicious activity report. But even that the form is quite similar, what triggers is different. So you need to do a proper risk assessment at national level, right?
Great. I think there was a second question in Slido. Thank you, Javier. More practical question here from the audience. Are there any AML training requirements that are specific to Spain?
Oh, yeah, basically every year the OCI, the internal body of control of the operator, has to approve an annual training plan. Okay, so this is the first point that normally is not considered probably by companies at an international level, and then the training, the content has to be tailor-made to Spain, and there have to be a specific means of evaluating that the employees that have gone through the training have acquired the specific knowledge. I think those are probably the most important requirements from a Spanish point of view.
Yeah, and maybe of course not just tick the box, so as you said, tailor-made. I think it's very important for operators that they are a group of different companies to have a different training plans according to the operator to different member states, right? So, because there is a good way to prove that your training is actually tailor-made and it's not just a copy-paste of the one that you have maybe in Brazil or whatever, right? So, yeah, I would say that, of course, the language and yeah, the normal requirements.
Very clear. I think that's very clear. Javier, Pedro, thank you very much for joining us here on stage and sharing your expertise. Thank you.
Gracias,